The Serpent Speaketh audiobook, Part 12, December 11th, 2012. The period after I had that hike with Daryl and started school until Thanksgiving is mostly a blur. Keith told me that I had stopped taking my medication, stayed up all night talking to myself, and eventually was thrown in the psychiatric unit when I was found running naked through the streets drunk on rum and coke. I don't remember any of this, and Keith is looking after me. A doctor stops by to give me my mandated shot of medication. Like I said, I have classes to go to, and my doctor and psychiatrist both tell me that I am doing much better now. I don't argue with them, but secretly, I really miss the times I talked to Cleo. The days when it seemed like anything was possible. The days when it seemed like I would grow stronger, instead of just surviving. Instead of just numbing out all of the pain. A small dream still lives somewhere inside of me. A dream about starting my own garden. A small tree sits on my windowsill, waiting for a day when I can plant it and start a garden of my own. If I were to think about it too hard, try to figure out all the logistics, I would probably get frustrated, think it would never happen, but hope I've got to keep alive, because it's one of the only things that keeps me going. As time passes, I'm hopeful that Keith will give me more and more privileges. I want to be able to get out of this house one day. Go to the local cafe. Maybe one day I'll be strong enough to talk to Cleo again. I'll be strong enough to accept everything. See her as more than just a blur and a faint memory. Live life and not be half sedated all the time. One day, Clyde stopped by and we went to the local Big Blue Cafe for dinner. Enlightenment was on my mind a lot, so that's what I wound up talking to Clyde about. I wanted to live the right life, the spiritual life. I asked Clyde how he did it. That thing they called enlightenment, it's not what you're feeling, Clyde told me. It's not even the perception that others have of you. You might look enlightened, but really be totally in shambles on the inside. Then how do you know if you're enlightened? I asked. He just shrugged, taking a bit of a fry. You'll know, he said. I'll know, I said. And no one else will, he said. What about the tree? If I plant it, is that a sign that I'm on the right track? He said. Who's to say, he said. I wasn't sure myself, I said, so that's why I asked you. He shrugged. How am I supposed to know what enlightenment looks like for you? Think about it. I waved him away in frustration. I'm going to move away from here the first chance I get, find a place to plant the tree, start a new life, and never look back. You think that'll solve anything? He said. Do you think staying here will? I asked. Not really, he said. I agree. Staying here won't solve anything either. It was quiet for a long time. I ate my grilled cheese and pickle. Don't worry about living the perfect life or becoming enlightened. I'm not enlightened, Daryl. Life is not a math problem. Life is not something that you read about in a book. It's something you have to live, he said. I nodded, half listening, and finished my pickle. December 12th, 2012. I had the day off from school and had nothing to do. I spent 3 hours watching TV and likely wouldn't have accomplished anything that day had Frank not shown up about midday. I was really surprised, to say the least. I hadn't seen him in half a year, but he said he wanted to see me. So what are you going to do after this year, after you get out of your classes and get a job? Frank asked. I'm going to finish my general studies degree and maybe get some work in one of the gardens up north, I said. Maybe travel around a bit. Start a garden store of my own. What's up north? He asked. I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it'll be different than here. Frank waved his hand in the air as if cursing God. There's nothing up north, he said. I shrugged and smiled. But it'll be different at least. A place for a new beginning. You really haven't thought it through, have you? Nothing changes with you, Frank said. I smiled. It was good to see you, I told Frank. He smiled too. We talked for a while, but I could tell that he was half on his way out. He left, and not too much later, Cleo appeared. "I doubt we'll ever see him again," she said. "Yeah," I said to Cleo. "I'm probably going to leave pretty soon." "I know," Cleo said. "No one else knows, but I know." "Thanks for not blabbing," I said. "You know, he's right. I hate to admit it," she told me, "but the world's not going to become easier just because you run away. You're going to confront all of your demons, and you're going to have to keep confronting them until you conquer them. As you get older, it's going to be harder and stranger, and you're going to have to get harder and stranger too, if you want to survive." "It could be a good thing," I said. "Nothing like the perfect city or the garden, but something greater." Cleo laughed. "You could also become part of something greater by dying," she said. "Not by dying on the inside like Frank has, but dying to your old ideas, your old dream, your old self." "What do you mean by that?" I asked. Well, if you want to live, you gotta let go of the past." She took a bottle of rum out of her pocket. "You want some?" she asked. I waved her away. She shrugged and took a swig herself. "You know, I feel sorry for Frank," she said. "Why?" I asked. "He's just a terrible person." "No, he's not. He's just like you. He's all alone. And maybe in different ways than you, he's messed up his family relations." "I thought you hated Frank," I said. "I don't hate him," she said. "I want him to get stronger. Maybe I don't know," she said. I looked into her eyes. For the first time, perhaps ever, she wasn't sure of herself. "So, do you regret what you told me to do to Frank?" She didn't say anything. "I'm the serpent," she said quietly after a pause. "And all life falls within my domain. So, what's going to happen to me if I take your advice and die to my old self? What am I going to become?" "I don't know," she said. "But you'll be much stronger. You'll be invincible," she tells me. Daryl's Dream Journal, Entry 11. What it was, I couldn't tell you. All I can say about the dream is that it was the most beautiful place I had ever been. Beautiful and ugly, yet chaotic all the same. The serpent was there under my feet while I struggled to fly, soaring for 1 second before crashing down again with the weight of all the vines. "Anything is possible, isn't it?" I asked the serpent. She just laughed. As she laughed, she transformed into the woman from the grocery store, into Summer, into the woman from the cafe, and finally into Cleo. "It's time I stopped living in dreams, isn't it?" I asked. She laughed. I laughed with her. She entered into my nostril and I let her, completely free from fear. I woke up, and when I did, I started walking. I felt completely free. I felt invincible. Epilogue. Clyde's Journal, Entry 1. I knew Daryl all of my life. He passed away, and I was immensely saddened. I was his brother after all, but I've come to understand that Daryl was different than most people. He wasn't exactly made for this world. Now I know if you're reading this, you might think the Old Serpent Woman is just a harmful hallucination. But I think, to him, she was more than that. I think she loved Daryl. She was a part of him, just like he's a part of me. Yes, she is and was flawed, but she also had a reason for existing and had lessons to teach him, to teach us all. In the end, even though Daryl died, I still see this as a story of hope. It might seem that no lessons were learned in the end, but I'm hoping that's not true, even if none of us know exactly what those lessons are. The Old Serpent Woman was, or rather is, the epitome of animal wisdom. The wisdom that comes from the darkness and the night. The wisdom that comes from life itself. Daryl wanted to share the truths she showed him. You might think that she died with Daryl, but that's not true. She might be silenced for a little while, but the Old Serpent Woman can never truly die. Sure, her body can wither and her body can turn to dust. We could destroy all the darkness, illuminate the entire universe, and she would still be there, just waiting, existing on the edge of chaos, between madness and death, the source of vitality, creativity, and life itself.